Banana Giant held liable for funding paramilitaries. Now, if you read up on three-letter agencies as much as I do, we knew, like we knew this was kind of a big deal, like back in the day. And then they do their usual thing where they wait for everyone who was involved to like retire or die, and then they come out with oh, we found this. Oh, we're just going to declassify all this stuff. How terrible, how awful. But don't worry, even though the CIA did absolutely terrible things in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, they absolutely are not doing that now. I'm very certain that 10, 20 years from now, we're not going to get a bunch of stuff declassified about all the horrendous stuff that they're up to currently. I'm certain that's not going to happen. But anyway, a court in the United States has found multinational fruit company Chiquita Brands International liable for financing a Colombian paramilitary group. And it's the same company, it's the same Chiquita. Yeah, a lot of people don't realise that Chiquita got a bloody government overthrown and had people killed. Like, do you remember? I remember. The group, the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, the AUC, was designated by the US as a terrorist organisation at the time. Following a civil case brought about by 8 Colombian families whose relatives were killed by the AUC, Chiquita has been ordered to pay $38.3 million in damages to the families. Chiquita said in a statement that it intended to appeal against the jury's verdict, arguing that there was no legal basis for the claim. The CIA declassified everything. You did it. Like, you did it. There is evidence. The jury in the case, which was held in a federal court in South Florida, found Chiquita responsible for the wrongful deaths of 8 men killed by the AUC. The AUC engaged in widespread human rights abuses in Colombia, including murdering people it suspected of links with left-wing rebels. The victims ranged from trade unionists to banana workers. The case, yeah, because basically anyone that was actually going to like do a strike or anything, or if they tried to unionize or anything, Chiquita hired these gunmen to like kill the trade union leaders or kill anyone that was trying to incite a strike. It was like a whole big thing. I probably should do a video on it, to be honest. The case was brought by the families after Chiquita pleaded guilty in 2007 to making payments to the AUC. During the 2007 trial, it was revealed that Chiquita had made payments amounting to more than 1.7 million to the AUC in the 6 years from 1997 to 2004. The Banana Giant said that it began making the payments after the leader of the AUC at the time, Carlos Castaño, implied that staff and property belonging to Chiquita's subsidiary in Colombia could be harmed if the money was not forthcoming. So it was protection money, I see. Lawyers for Chiquita argued that the company had no choice but to pay the AUC to protect its Colombian employees from violence. But the plaintiffs, or plantains, argued that the company formed an unholy alliance with the AUC at a time when Chiquita was expanding its presence in regions controlled by the AUC. The regular payments continued even after the AUC was designated by the US as a foreign terrorist organization in 2001. While the AUC claimed to have been created to defend landowners from attacks and extortion attempts by left-wing rebels, the paramilitary group often acted as a death squad for drug traffickers. At its height, it had an estimated 30,000 members who engaged in intimidation, drug trafficking, extortion, forced displacements, and killings. It also launched brutal attacks on villagers they suspected of supporting left-wing rebels. The group demobilized in 2006 after reaching a peace deal with the government, but some of its members went on to form new splinter groups which continue to be active. The class action lawsuit against Chiquita, which ended on Monday, focused on 9 cases, which were chosen out of hundreds of claims against the banana company. The jury found that the AUC was responsible for 8 of the 9 murders examined as part of the lawsuit. The jury also ruled that Chiquita had knowingly provided substantial assistance to the AUC to a degree sufficient to create a foreseeable risk of harm. Chiquita said in a statement released after the verdict that the situation in Colombia was tragic for so many, including those directly affected by the violence there, and our thoughts remain with them and their families. However, that does not change our belief that there is no legal basis for these claims, added. The company said it remained confident that its legal position would ultimately prevail. Agnieszka Friesman, hate these names. One of the leading lawyers for the plaintiffs, meanwhile, praised the families she represented, saying that they had risked their lives to come forward to hold Chiquita to account because they were just popping people off that were causing problems. Like, the stuff's been declassified, right? Fruit companies, like what country was it? I forget the nation, but basically a government in South America literally got toppled because of a fruit company. I forget the name of the incident, but look it up. Said they'd risk their lives to come forward to hold Chiquita to account, putting their faith in the United States justice system. She added that the verdict does not bring back the husbands and sons who were killed, but it sets the record straight and places accountability for funding terrorism where it belongs, at Chiquita's doorstep. Another lawyer for the Colombian families, Leslie Kroger, said that after a long 17 years against a well-funded defence, justice was finally served. A second case against Chiquita is brought by another group of plaintiffs is due to start on the 15th of July. Now, one thing that the CIA and all the other, mostly the CIA, they did the lion's share of it, but like, they were just, the three-letter agencies were just always dicking with South American countries, all the time. And I feel bad because I forget the name of the nation. Was it Bolivia? I don't know if it was Bolivia. Don't quote me on that. But basically, a communist took over and said, we're going to seize the land back and give it back to the people. Now, fruit companies own a lot of land because obviously they need to grow the fruit trees that they use to then sell on to people and ship all over the world. And because their land was going to get taken from them, they said, hey, US government, please, can we have a little bit of help? And the CIA pure went... Because if there's one thing the CIA loves, it's an excuse, right? So they basically funded the guy's opposition, provided weapons, provided money, provided funding, provided propaganda, provided support, all manners of stuff to the communist opposition because it was a good way to protect a vetted American interest and get a pesky little communist out of power. So what ended up happening was a civil war in which very, very, very many people died. Like... woo! Yeah, it was pretty bad. And essentially, the leftist government got toppled, the CIA then installed their guy, and the fruit company got to keep its land. This was a whole documented thing that ended up coming out, like, years later after the fact. And, I mean, at the time, like, people knew. People were kind of like, I mean, it was obvious, because America just spent its 60s, 70s, and 80s. America was just decking with South America constantly. They were never out of there. Like, see all the stuff, like, you remember Ollie North and all that, you know, he was funding the Contras and shit like that. Like, they see a lot of the fucking, like, drug dealers and all that shit and all the cartels, like, the CIA was the one providing them with guns and all that. Why do you think there's so many, like, American guns, like, in South America? And they're all over the place. There's shit tons of them. Because it was the CIA that was doing it. The CIA was also working directly with cartels to orchestrate the crack epidemic. The CIA was also working directly with fucking the Italian mafia and shit. Like, there was all manners of stuff that they've done. But don't worry, everyone. They absolutely don't do it anymore.